All right. So hopefully you have your calculator out and ready to go. We're going to talk about a couple just like signs that you need to keep in mind. Okay, if I have something like this with a little 2, we call that squared. Okay, if I have something that has a little 3 in it, that's called cubed. So when I say something squared, this is what I'm talking about. You have a little 2 as your exponent. If I say something cubed, you have a little 3 as your exponent. Now, you guys know what's the opposite of like adding? Subtracting. What's the opposite of multiplying? Dividing. There's the opposite of squaring something or cubing something. So the opposite of squaring something is taking the square root, and that's what this sign is. Okay, so when I say what's the opposite of square, it's square root. What's the opposite of cubing something? It's called the cubed root. And it looks like this. So anytime you see any of these signs, I'm going to refer to them as squared, cubed, square root, or cubed root. Okay? I want to first of all kind of explain what it means to square something. So when you are squaring something, you're trying to find the number that multiplies together, just 2 of them, but they're the same number. So like 16 is a perfect square. What 2 things multiply together to give you 16, but they have to be the same number? Because we know 2 times 8 is 16, but that's not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about 4 times 4. They're the same number. So the square root of 16 is 4. Perfect squares, you've probably seen these before. What is multiplied together to give me 49? It's the same number multiplied together. 7 times 7. So the square root of 49 is just 7. This one's the square root of 1. What times what gives you 1? Just 1. So any of these that don't have, do you see how some of them have like a little 3 right here? Any of the ones that don't want the square root, you break it down into 2 numbers that multiply together to give you that number that's under the little check mark looking thing. So what 2 things multiply together to give you 81? 9 times 9. So the answer, you just write it once, is 9. All right, so the other ones that we have up here are cubed root. That little exponent 3 tells you that we're not breaking this down into 2 numbers, we're breaking it down into 3 different numbers. So something times something times something gives me 1. That would be 1 times 1 times 1. So the answer to this one is also 1. This could be a guess and check situation for you, like you pick a number, you multiply it 3 times, and you see if what happens. 343. 3 things multiplied together. It's the same number multiplied together 3 different times. So you can just start by trying some random numbers, like 4 times 4 times 4. That's 64. Do I need a bigger number than 64? What am I trying to get to? 343. So 64 is too small. So I'm going to try like 6 times 6 times 6. That one I get 216. So I know it still needs to be a bigger number. 7 times 7 times 7. There we go. I figured out that 7 times 7 times 7 is 343. So the answer to this one is just 7. I'm going to circle the answers. You only want to write the number 1 time. So when you have this little 3 above the little check mark looking thing, that means you want to break this into 3 different numbers, not just 2. So 3 things that multiply to give me 1,000. 10 times 10 times 10. So the cubed root of 1,000 is just 10. We have 3 things that multiply together to give me 729. And you can just guess if you want. For now, I'm going to show you an easier way soon, but I want you to know like the process of what it means. What three things multiply together to give you 729? Yep, 9 times 9 times 9. So the cubed root of 729 is equal to 9. So you got to pay really close attention. If there's a 3 above it, you're breaking it into 3 numbers. If there's no number above the little check mark, you're breaking it into 2 numbers, not just 3. So I don't know if we did these. So this one has a 3 above it. I know I'm taking 3 things together to multiply. I want to get the number 125. So I'm just going to start by taking 5 times 5 times 5, which does give me 125. Number 10, there is no 3 above it. So we don't want to break this into 3 numbers. We only want to break it into 2 numbers. What times what gives me 4? It has to be the same number. 2 times 2. So the answer, sorry, I didn't even write the answer to this one. This one was just 5, and this one is just 2. Okay, so I'm going to have you try the rest of these. I'm going to give you about 5 minutes, and you might not get all of them done. That's fine. But I want you to try the rest of these. Remember, if it has a little 3 above it, you're breaking it into 3 numbers. If it doesn't have a little 3, you're only breaking it into 2 numbers. So I'm going to let you kind of guess and check to figure out your answers. Some of them you might just know. And then in 5 minutes, we're going to come back and go over them. I'm just going to let the video roll for 5 minutes. So if you're watching the video, you can just skip till I start going over the answers. For answers, I know you might not be all the way done. Oops, I just made a mark there. So what is 11 It doesn't have a 3 over it. You're only wanting to break this into 2 numbers. So what times what gives you 9? 3 times 3. So the answer, you just want to write one of them, is 3. 216. What times what times what? Is it 6? 6 times 6 times 6. Yep. So the answer to number 12 was 6. You only write it one time. 36 does not have a 3 over the little check mark part. You're only wanting to break that into 2 numbers. What times what gives you 36? 6. So that's the answer to this one. Something times something times something. Oh my goodness, what did I just write? Okay, anyway. Something times something times something gives you 8. What would that number be? 4 times 4 times 4 is going to get you too big of a number. So it's 2 times 2 times 2. So 14 is 2. 512. 8 times 8 times 8. Yep. So 8 is the answer to number 15. 64. This one does not have a 3. You only want to break it down into 2 numbers, and this would also be 8. 8 times 8 equals 64. That's a perfect square. This is also a perfect square. You guys know the list of those. We'll kind of go over those in a second, but what times what gives me 100? 10. Number 17 is 10. 64, but we want the cubed root of that, so we're breaking it into 3 numbers, not just 2. Something times something times something. 4 is the answer. I don't know what was going on with number 19. There's a hole there. So if you're just finding the square root of 25, it would be 5. But if you're finding, you can't find the cubed root. It has to be the square. So we'll just put 5 there. And lastly, 27. Something times, and this is cubed root. Something times something times something gives you 27. That would be 3. So now you kind of know the difference between a square root and a cubed root. We have come up with lists of perfect squares before. We have 1, 4, 9, 16, 25, 36, 49. You can go on and on and on and write all the perfect squares, but you can also write these for cubes. Okay, so if you want, I'm going to show you an easier way on your calculator to start typing this stuff in. Say that and the rumor is we're allowed to use our calculator the whole time on the map test, but I'm not 100% on that. So I wanted to show you without kind of the calculator how you could reason through that. But if we are allowed to use the calculator for that, there's an easy way to type it in. Say I want the cubed root of 1,000. So I don't want the square root, which is this. I want the cubed root. So you're looking for you see how there's like blue things over your calculator? There's like the button, and then right above the button, there's like a little blue symbol. Do you see that? That means you have to hit the blue second button to get to it. You want the cubed root. So you're going to hit a 3 first. Cubed root means you want a 3. Then you're going to hit the second button, and then you're going to hit this up arrow. It has like an X right there in the square root part. That just tells you, okay, I want a 3 where the X goes. And if I want the cubed root of 1,000, now I just type in 1,000. And it's going to tell you that number. Okay? So that just means 10 times 10 times 10 equals 1,000. So if I want the cubed root of 729, you have to start with the 3 for the cubed root part. You'd hit second, and then this up arrow right here. And if I want 729, I'm going to type it in. It's 9. Yeah, but you have to know what it means before I just show you all the buttons on the calculator. So if you get lost and if they let you use your calculator on the map test, you are allowed to do that. Hopefully, I don't know, maybe you will be, maybe you won't be. If not, we're going to go ahead and come up with like the common ones that they show you for cubed root. They do 1 a lot because that's the same thing as 1 times 1 times 1. They do 8 a lot because that's the same thing as 2 times 2 times 2. And 3 times 3 times 3 is 27. They do that one a lot. So we can just keep coming up with a list of cubed roots as well. These are the most common ones that I see. But 4 times 4 times 4 is 64. You can see that one. and 125 is on that list. And sometimes you'll even see 216 for 6. So this is a list that we remember often is the square root list, but this right here is a cubed root list that you should be familiar with just to know, like, oh, it's 8. I know that one off the top of my head. Okay? So those are our notes.